Hello, today is the 24th of December 2022, and we'll talk about an interesting architect from South Korea, Hoon. Uh, and let me move forward if the technology allows me to. Something is happening here. Why is this happening? Why? Okay. So Hoon grew up near a coal mine in Gyeongsang in the eastern part of the peninsula near, a little bit difficult to read, Pyeongchang in South Korea. Later he moved to Tasmania in Australia following a complex formative itinerary thanks to his scientist father. Moon conceptually challenges the commonplace notion of the architect and architecture. For him, drawings are a manifestation of, I quote, creative terrorism, opposing the monolithic and neutral world that institutions would have us believe is the only possible reality. El, de fapt, o să vedeți că e un om, de fapt, foarte amabil. His idea of making architecture as a continuous flirting with the client can be traced to his Massachusetts Institute of Technology graduation thesis in 1993. At this time, Moon was fully immersed in Hinduism and Indian philosophy, but he also admired the architecture of Tadao Ando and Lebbeus Woods. He was fascinated by the landscape of Varanasi, where sacred and profane, life and death, cremation and bathing coexist. During his study, Professor Charles Correa from India despised most of Moon's academic projects and even tried to dissuade him from becoming an architect. Interesting. Charles Correa was a very good Indian architect, but he probably was a professor at Yale at that time when Hoon studied there. Having barely graduated, so he barely graduated, Moon had a hard time finding a job since no one would write him a letter of introduction. Moon places drawings on the same level as real constructions, since both are different manifestations of an identical desire, only different in their means of expression. He calls himself the happy destroyer. Obviously, he likes oxymorons or paradoxes. And here there is a map with some of his works, and let's move forward. He did build, and he continues to build. So he has a certain amount of success. As I said, Arch Daily presents his works rather often. This is the man. And I like the frame of his door. Why not? A nonconformist, of course. And that's why I said, his work is maybe, we could associate with the 24th of December. Tomorrow will be Christmas for our religion. And here is a man from South Korea who, through his work, advocates freedom, creativity, joy. So I like to think that, the birth of Christ could make us think in these terms: freedom, creativity, and joy. Now, Rocket Suda is an interesting project. Let's read a little bit about it. After passing through the mountainous range of Yangtze, Hangwon-do, we met steeper inclinations and wilder curves. A few moments later, we were invited by an open scenery by the left side. Sorry, I can't read the text because it's this tab here now. It's unbelievable. Sometimes technology is so rigid, especially with a very old laptop like mine. So we stopped and got off from the Vera Veracruz, a new Hyundai SUV ahead of us. There was a wide ride. I don't know. This is a text by him, but it rather confuses me. I think it's some kind of a. There are several houses here that he built, and it might be some kind of a rental space. Um, anyway, they are weekend houses, and they are very interesting. You know, he proposed these houses more than he built. I think he only built those five on the right side of this drawing, and here they are. I mean, did you ever see a house with horns? I'm referring to this one here. I personally didn't until now. Here it is. I mean, look at even at this house, you know, very unusual. Of course, colored houses we did see, but not a house with horns and not a house with this kind of windows. Um, but why not? You know, why not? There might have been a reason, you know, for him using such, you know, elements, so to speak, you know, such entities like the horns. He has a humoristic side, but he is a modern architect through and through, and he draws brilliantly, I think, and he does manual drawings, not maybe now he does also computer drawings, but not renderings. You will see they are very original and very engaging. Not just for the eye, but also for the head, for the brain. They make you think. Anyway, he's a provocateur. He's a provocative architect, and I thought, you know, in my attempt to animate the students here towards becoming more free, less inhibited, maybe Moon Hoon could do that. Maybe. I mean, it's a house, but who would paint, you know, the walls of one's house with this very strong red? I don't think too many people. Or to have the flooring done in this way. You'd rather think this is a disco. It's not a disco. Here are other images of, you know, one of these houses. Maybe you can read the text associated with this house. He's whimsical and playful, and you know, even this kind of collage of images of this house shows it. I can understand why you know, serious architect, although Charles Correa was a force in Indian architecture and international architecture. Kenneth Frampton admires Charles Correa a lot. I admire him too, but it seems Moon Hoon irritated Charles Correa. This only shows that actually you could have two architects, both good, but if they are they do very different architecture, they don't get along. Because, you know, they are artists too, they are subjective, they have their own capriciousness and their own ideas. Plus, as Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychoanalyst, said, when we criticize vehemently someone outside of us, that's because there is something within us that is reflected back to us from the one we criticize. So implicitly or indirectly or obliquely, we criticize ourselves when we criticize someone vehemently outside of ourselves. A happy family house. Now, I don't know if it's so happy, this house. I don't find it particularly happy, but there are interesting things here, like, this oblique plane, and look at that child, on the table, and then, all this sloping library. No, it's not done usually. I wonder if it's also used on the other side as a staircase. Apparently it is, and it even has this, thing on which the children, move with joy. There is a blackboard there, and yes, there is playfulness. There is also seriousness if we associate books with the seriousness. But these images seem to suggest that children do like challenges, like this, toddler climbing on these, rather difficult steps. And maybe, there is a suggestion here to think less in terms of horizontal and vertical. Of course, the house has horizontals and verticals as well, but also has sloping planes and oblique and diagonal constructive elements. Now, a sweet villa. Uh, it's almost literally a sweet villa, isn't it? I go a little bit quickly because we have 400 images, and I don't want to keep you for too long here. You do need to meet Santa very soon, so I'll go a little bit quick. Uh, it is sweeter than the towers on the left, of course, because of the colors, and also the ornamental line, the ornamental graphic work on this wall that we look at. The interior, for my taste, is a little bit too white and too septic. Anyway, it is what it is. He doesn't do perfect works, but he still does some interesting things. Some of them may be more interesting than others. Another villa, I don't know if it is in Seoul or not. He is located in Seoul. That's where his office is. Uh, this one also maybe is not so interesting. I had seen better ones, and we are going to see them. I asked him when I exchanged a few emails with him, how do you want me to call you, Moon or Hoon? And he said it doesn't matter. But there's an interesting name, Moon Hoon. Maybe because we know what moon means. South Korea has a high level of architecture, these days, because economically is doing very well. They experiment a lot. So he's one of the architects of interest in South Korea. Wind house. This one is very whimsical, and you'll understand that uh, white element there on the left after you see a picture of the house. Here it is. Maybe it's too whimsical, because if architecture is an abstract art, maybe here the level of the figurative, of the literal representation, maybe is too high. But it's interesting, and he assumes also the tectonics courageously, like you see here in this world. He's really unique. I mean, how many architects would have the nerve to do something like this? And then there is a room here. There is a space there. It's not just a sculpture or anything like that. And look at the houses around the house that Moon Hoon built. You know, they are probably outraged. They probably, I don't know, maybe one day they will burn down the house, because this house by Moon Hoon has nothing to do with the houses around it. Nothing. I mean, talking about context and integration, there is no integration at all. It doesn't bother me. Why should we all be the same? Why? I mean, these people are all the same. Well, this one is, a passeist statement, but these are all the same. And here comes Moon Hoon with a strange thing. I'm sure there is a story behind why he did this. It's like, but look, he is a serious architect who likes to joke and who is whimsical. And this is that room. I mean, inside this head of an architectural animal, this is the interior. Now, of course, some people would dismiss, like Charles Correa would totally dismiss this, would say it's total nonsense. This is not architecture. But I'm not so sure it's not architecture. How else would we call it? And the man works hard. I mean, imagine doing just the working drawings for such a detail. Or you see, he's also assuming, as I said, the tectonics of architecture seriously, where he feels like it. But then he introduces such disturbing elements that could puzzle one, especially the conventional critic. He seems to like to unite the opposites, and thus create an oxymoronic architecture or paradoxical architecture, which is both grave, serious, and almost hilarious or humorous. It's built impeccably. It's not an architectural joke. It's 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 more, I think. And he knows how to build in a modern way. We see very well. It's just that he has this interest in surprises of this sort. I would be curious to know what you think about it when I end the presentation, and maybe we'll have a short discussion, because he's an interesting architect of the present. I am usually rather stern and a moralist in the field of architecture, but his joie de vivre amuses me, and I'm not, I cannot really criticize it. He knows his craft, he knows what he's doing, and I mean, there are architectural things here done properly, but there are these eccentricities that make him infuriate someone like Charles Correa. This is also interesting. Most architects probably would have made the windows as tall as the door. you know, or elevate the windows from the floor, but have them in line or aligned at the top. He aligned them at the bottom, but not at the top. This is not so usually done. Most people would not do something like this for sure. No, I mean, I'm talking about most architects. No, no. It does need courage, even a little bit of craziness to do something like this. But he's a good builder. I mean, even this staircase, you know, is done properly. The idea to make a house like a disco or discotheque is can be debated, or you know, we can talk about it. But it seems he likes this idea to create this kind of interior that, with the proper music, could indeed be very easily a disco. What about the architect as a DJ? Did you think about it? Could an architect be this? I mean, create an architecture which approximates in a way the the playfulness of a DJ? Maybe. Why not? For example, by the way of this, Eric Owen Moss built a building called Rapper, from to rap, and but he wrote it W and then put it in between parentheses and then rapper, Rapper, which is, you know, a musician, a rapper. But with a W in front of it, it becomes something else. And that's because the building he did is indeed wrapped in an exoskeleton, the structure. Now, Two Moon Junction. This is another house, and I like this house. Indeed, there are two moons on the elevation. You see them here, you know, and it's a dialogue between these two buildings through this erosion, moonlight on both corners. I think it's an interesting idea, and it's unfortunately I forgot. I read the about why he did it. So I see here, I think, two constellations. It's some kind of a reference to, you know, to the sky at night, to the moon, and and there is a story behind it, which unfortunately I do not recall now. I prepared this presentation about 4 years ago, if not five, and but I like it. It's a narrative architecture, so the narrative elements become ornamental elements, and there is this you know, surprise, architectonic surprise with the two moons. I mean, even the idea to have a, you know, two moons when we know it, there is only one, but here we are feeling and thinking and doing in terms, in poetical terms. So I think it's interesting also because these two half moons in your mind, if we are, let's say, like a Zen monk, you complete the picture in your mind. So from two half moons, you get one full moon in your mind, if you make abstraction of the split between the two buildings. May I imagine he likes the moon. I mean, his name is Moon, so a simple house. It's not so simple, but that's how he calls it. Simple house. I think it's nice. I like it. You know, the structure becomes ornament, you know, I probably for, you know, structural reasons alone, these diagonal elements didn't need to be like this. But he was searching for a certain expression, and I think he got it. And you know, it could have been a cantilevered, wholly cantilevered house, but with these diagonal elements, he strengthened the house, the building, and at the same time it makes it more interesting, I think. So it's a play with a tormented geometry a little bit. The interior sometimes for me, I'm subjective, but for me, they are a little bit, again, you can use color. We saw it, the disco space, but here sometimes is a little bit too, in a way, too shy. Maybe, you know, the client requires something like this. That's possible too. But we see here again, he plays with the library in a creative way. And here again, he unites, you know, the stair with the shelves for the books. So there is a rhythmicity here, a conjunction between the stair and the shelves of the library that amplifies this dynamic quality, I think. Concrete, what can we do? We like concrete, but concrete pollutes. But when he built this house, there wasn't such a concern with pollution as it is these days. But today, I think we have to be careful with this. I like concrete myself, as opposed to Frank Lloyd Wright, who didn't like it, and that's why he called it a conglomerate. But you see here, I really like this fact. It's like a distorted polyeder. It's somehow makes me think of Kepler. You know, it's something here. You know, he uses geometry, but then because of these diagonals, he creates some kind of an illusion of a polyeder that is distorted. And I don't know if I'm inspired enough now to comment, you know, correctly about what I try to say. I'm probably not, so I better jump to something else. But maybe you understand when you look at this. You know, most people, if they would have done these two prisms, you know, one above the other, they would not have added these, you know, structural elements, horizontal and I mean, or diagonal around, because they might not even be necessary for structural reason alone. I don't think he made them for structural reasons. They was more like a quest probably for some kind of a wholeness and roundness, because such houses cantilevered with two prisms, one above the other, had been built in the Netherlands, in other countries. There are architects who can do this. But I didn't see architects who completed some kind of a distorted roundness or wholeness the way he did with these linear elements. So I think he's interesting from this point of view as well. Moon Hoon. I think he's better with smaller buildings like private residences, but I will see some larger buildings as well. He also contributed to the Venice Biennial, so he's. You see here, it's interesting because these elements around the house, you know, they belong to the house, but they are, you know, they are structural, they are graphic, they envelop the house as I try to say, in a quest for some kind of a roundness and wholeness that maybe without them would not have been achieved. And you should see his drawings. I will show some of his drawings here, not too many, but usually I start a presentation showing drawings of the architect. In this case, I didn't, but I should have, because he has a prodigious graphic activity related to architecture that is very unique. And yeah, I regret I didn't do it. Maybe next year. Now, there is this website where I learned about an interview by a Russian student who worked with him in Seoul, in South Korea. Strelka is a very interesting architecture school. In fact, I talked yesterday with Victor, the young architect who often participates these presentations. It's a very innovative architecture school in Moscow, Strelka. And on this website, strelka.com, you can see, probably still see, I saw it 4 years ago, but it's probably still there somewhere, an interview with someone who worked as an intern for Hoon in Seoul, a former student of Strelka. It's Alisa Silantieva who told Strelka magazine why architectural inspiration should be sought in food rather than in buildings, what it felt like working at the South Korean avant-garde practice Hoon. And here they are, the South Korean architect with a Russian student. Nice. I think when there is creativity, when there is joy because of this creativity, the gods are smiling too. So Hoon creates housing with owl-like features in South Korea. Let's see them. It's an abstracted owl, but not totally abstracted. Now that we are told it's an owl, we can see it. Otherwise, the house is resolutely modern, almost you could have said inspired by Marcel Breuer or some kind of a brutalist modernist architecture. Um, Here is the owl. Again, his interiors, now that I look again at his works, for me, they are not always, and it's possible that I mean, there seems to be some distance between the interior and the exterior. But maybe this was a requirement of the client. The exterior is more, you know, I could almost say perhaps more brutal, and the interior, almost domestic and soft in terms of colors and light, with the exception when he creates disco-like environments. But I like the house from the outside, and maybe it makes sense, this disjunction between the interior and the exterior. Maybe the exterior is kind of like an urban fortress, defending itself against a harsh, more or less harsh environment, and the interior is soft because it's the interior for a family, and we see from the outside the light, inside the expresses softness. I think this might be him, maybe. Uh, Anyway, if he studied at MIT, this is a highly trained architect. I mean, Massachusetts Institute of Technology disputes with Bartlett the first position for the best architecture schools in the world. So I guess he had an accident. I see here he's not been the same since the crash, but he smiles a hell of a lot more. Or maybe this is, I don't know, the drawings are by Moon Hoon. Um, this is a text about Moon Hoon by this person. I'm not going to read it now. Some drawings by Moon Hoon, and I'm glad I have the occasion to show them. Now, of course, this kind of drawing, one would easily say is not architectural. It's not about architecture. He calls this an urban robot. He does very fantastic, fantasist drawings. And as we read, he considers the drawing another medium through which he explores architecture. And he doesn't consider the drawing inferior to the built building. Hoon's sketches merge fantasy with reality, contrasting tranquil urbanity with spectacular chaos. He has a prodigious imagination, as you can see. And he also employs words, as you can see as well. And, it's like he's questing for some kind of an architecture, both through the words and the drawings or the images. Moon Hoon. Again, these are handmade drawings. Maybe now he draws also, digitally, but these were made as handmade drawings. So he explores through the medium of drawing all kinds of ideas, and we had seen that what this drawing or this sketch shows. We had seen the house, the built house. These drawings are probably from a. I mean, I see 2 pages, so they're either from a book or maybe he does these drawings in a pad of papers with like a book, a notes book. Body architecture from doodle constructivism. Moon Hoon is obviously polemical towards conventional orthodox modern architecture. This is the owl house that we saw. Yeah, these are fantastic drawings. I mean, who would draw something like this? An architect who builds. So he can be described as a creator of fantasies. But we saw he also builds, and he knows how to build, and he builds a lot actually. Although he has a small office, Um, what is this? A guest house. I like this house. You know, it's unusual. It's unexpected. It's go mere guest house. Maybe some kind of a hostel here. And from this balcony, you know, one can contemplate the, you know, the landscape, the urban landscape, which might not be very impressive, but I don't know, or maybe the sunset. Yeah, it's some kind of a hostel, also with a small area for eating. His beloved red sometimes, and here he has black and red, you know, life and death. But the interior, I have a feeling, I could be wrong, that you know, sometimes at least the decision to make the interiors more placid chromatically comes from the clients. But you see, outside is not afraid to use so-called powerful colors like red and black. A black building, after all, now with the touches of redness. Is unusual. I mean, look at these two windows here rotated. There were even in the 19th century and maybe even earlier rotated windows. But here, you know, the way he pushes the windows very close to the edge of this wall, and you know, think of this detail. It shows an unusual, you know, an unusual attempt to create, you know, conflict in a way, you know, like here. I like this corner here with these four windows. You know, he creates something special, something that would have been very easily less special. Anyway, moving forward, we still have a lot to see. I never saw such a window before, or you know, succession of windows. I had seen rotated windows, square windows at 45 degrees, but not done in this way. I find it very interesting.
Ce faci? Sunt într-o conferință. Nu pot. Acum. Vezi că am și mâine. Da.
Mi-a zis că te-au sunat.
Acum m-au sunat.
Înțeleg.
Vă rog să se aude în fundal convorbirea. Dacă sunteți amabili să opriți microfonul. Mulțumesc. Anyway, I shouldn't talk in Romanian. I began in English. I should continue in English. I find his whitish spaces a little bit, but maybe he enjoys this contrast. He has red spaces and white spaces. So maybe, yes, there is a reason for that periscope, if I am to call it so, that balcony there, elevated as it is, so you can see the water on the left, probably the ocean. Docok Maximum, another house, very different from the context, as we can see. There is ornament here on this wall. We see it clearly. It's this facade as architectonic tattoo, so to speak. These inscriptions is unusual, and now we see again the ornamentation inside the decorative pattern. So these lines on the facade, they also appear in his drawings, and he actually intended to build in this way, this is done these days by other people, but it's like he treats the facade like a bidimensional artwork, and he tries to make it dynamic and interesting, even if here is just a white facade, but because of those incisions in the wall, it becomes special. I think this is an interesting idea to, uh, you can use a prism, and then you can problematize it through these diagonals and these sharp angles. So you create an abstract pattern on a surface which otherwise is, maybe not so. Apparently, he has some reasons. Unfortunately, I cannot read now, but he created these patterns on the facade, on the elevation, probably with a certain goal. So in this drawing, we see the formal ideology of the building, if I can call it so. And it's probably explained, but maybe in Korean, and it's impossible to decipher it. But even the drawing, I think, is interesting. It makes me think of images with choreographic work by Oskar Schlemmer at the Bauhaus. Anyway, I'm beginning to think that this presentation is too long, and I apologize. I know I have 400 images, and it is long. I should make a shorter one. Anyway, I present his works rather in detail, but being so long, I mean, I would probably need 3 hours to present thoroughly his buildings. But I think his idea to attempt to destroy in a way the prism or the or the placid geometry or the more common geometry is interesting. Yes, is the work of a plastic artist rather than of an architect. Obviously, he doesn't say no to the ornament, and these diagonals are of an ornamental nature. But they do create the illusion of being something, rather mysterious and complex. Although maybe without these diagonals, the building wouldn't be so, difficult to decipher or to understand. And we see the relationship between the drawing and the build. Another house, Conan House. Now, I don't know if this drawing really connects with the house, but it was published together with the house. Maybe it does in some way. It's whimsical, it's whimsical. His work often has a whimsicality. And this ludic element appears here too. More ludic here than in the previous hostel that we looked at. Again, the library kind of in the center of the house, like a sculptural entity in a way. So the books, the knowledge, and Che Guevara, we see but this does not belong to the architect, but to the clients, are right in the center of the house. An interesting idea now to connect the library with the staircase at the core, in the core of the building, as opposed to placing typically the library against the wall at the periphery of the room. So you move around the library, you move around the knowledge. The book becomes, in a way, the center of the house. Whimsical also the entrance into the house, Another one, V-Sang House. This one perhaps not so interesting, but still cannot be neglected. Of course, the functionalists would protest about this, angle here and maybe even here, but some people like discomfort, and I don't think everything has to be judged, in terms of a Neufertian notion of comfort or righteousness, architectural righteousness. It could be interesting, even to sit on the floor in this space here, maybe hit your head in the sloping, ceiling. But this corner, at least for a child, I'm sure a child would enjoy it very much. Maybe even an adult with introvertive qualities or attributes or characteristics. Panorama house. This one we saw already. It's the same house, but it's called also Panorama house. Well, I don't know what's going on here. It's funny pictures. I see here the endless column by Brâncuș, but horizontally, well, kind of, because this element is bigger than the others. But it's about becoming, actually, in the case of Brâncuș, is a becoming upwards, vertically. Here is a horizontal becoming. It's about process. For a big family, it seems. The architect, yes, the architect. Hyundai High School, Seoul. I think his big buildings, public buildings, are not so, for me, they are not so convincing somehow. But let's look quickly at some of them. So it's a what is it? A high school in Seoul. Maybe now, as opposed to 4 years ago, I'll perceive it differently. Anyway, they experiment, obviously. There are other architects in Seoul and in South Korea, very creative, and he's one of them. Another house. As you can see, he enjoys graphic provocations for the non-academic, audience. Is this house here, and he employs this mask, this second skin that other architects do too, and it's a way to create kind of two elevations, two facades, one deriving its openings and its aesthetical decisions from the functions inside, and the other one, maybe more or less capriciously or responding to the context outside. So the second facade is a mask, is a veil which responds to the maybe the urban context, and what is behind it responds to the inner context of the house. There are other architects who do this. Maybe this is in quest for a, a complex architecture, or appearing to be complex. An attempt, yes, to avoid the simple architectural gestures, and maybe complicate matters a little bit, but it's important to be present in our time. Now he built a surprise, a Louis Vuitton church. So you wouldn't expect to find a church, associated with this creator of expensive bags and so on, Louis Vuitton. So it's an interesting church, actually, not only in Seoul, but also in my desolate hometown, he wrote, there are many neon lit red crosses. Neon lit red crosses. This is the very nightscape of cities and country towns in Korea. While listening to the shouting of the crosses, I think about how much energy and passion of the religious revival permeates this nation. An overflowing of the unidentifiable energy and mixed cultures. An acquaintance of mine who visited my office saw the model of the church and said, just a second, because I don't see the text now. It's terrible, absolutely terrible, and I don't know how to get rid of this tab, horizontal tab, which blocks. It's unbelievable. It blocks the image. You don't see it, but I see it. I see it and I don't see the text. So an acquaintance of mine who visited my office saw the model of the church and said, wow, it looks like Louis Vuitton. So it wasn't actually, it looks like a Louis Vuitton, but it's not. It has nothing to do with a fashion mogul. Just a second, let me move forward. I don't think he built it, but or did he? Let me see. No, it's just a rendering. It was a project where he spread these crosses on the facades of the church. But is this another building? Building. Here he has elements of high tech, but he still has the ludic disposition. It might be a school. Another house. The idea to use curtains towards the outside was used by other people as well, like Shigeru Ban. But you know, I think it could work. So he seems to be preoccupied by this veil, you know, this mask, that it is a curtain or it is some kind of a steel mesh, or he likes to problematize the simple or simplistic reading of the exterior of the building. He also seems to enjoy this observation deck above, you know, the building. Interesting picture, no, with a reddish red curtain and the black cat. I wonder if he staged this picture. He probably did. Down with Syriacism. I end this presentation with this manifesto written by Bruno Taut. And yesterday I wanted to present a tower for Bruno Taut. Actually, today is his birthday, Bruno Taut's birthday, and I'm happy I forgot I included this manifesto, short manifesto by Bruno Taut. But here he is. Today is the birthday of Bruno Taut, the 24th of December. And he did write this, you know, some might say controversial, polemical, short manifesto. Let's read it. Down with seriousness. Nothing wrong with seriousness, but everything is wrong with seriousism, where seriousness becomes an ism. Let's read it. Hop, 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 my sweet little horsey, hop, hop, hop. Where do you want to go? Over that high wall? Well, really, I don't know. Hop, 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 my sweet little horsey, hop, hop, hop. Where do you want to go? Away with the sourpussies, the wailing willies, the sober sides, the bro followers, the eternally serious, the sweet sour ones, the forever important. Important. This damned habit of acting important. Tombstone and cemetery facades in front of junk shops and old clothes stores. Smash the shell-lime Doric, Ionic and Corinthian columns, demolish the pinheads, down with the so-called respectability of sandstone and plate glass in fragments with the rubbish of marble and precious wood, to the garbage heap with all that junk. Oh, our concepts, space, home, style. How these concepts stink. Destroy them, put an end to them, let nothing remain. Chase away their schools, let the professorial wigs fly, we'll play catch with them. Blast, blast, let the dusty, matted, gummed up world of concepts, ideologies, and systems fill our cold north wind. Death to the concept lies. Death to everything stuffy. Death to everything called title, dignity, authority. Down with everything serious. Down with all camels that won't go through the eye of a needle, with all worshippers of Mammon and Moloch. The worshippers of force must knuckle under the force. We are sick of their blood-sucking, caterwauling in the early light. In the distance shines our tomorrow. Hooray, 3 times hooray for our kingdom without force. Hooray for the transparent, the clear. Hooray for purity. Hooray for crystal. Hooray and again hooray for the fluid, the graceful, the angular, the sparkling, the hashing, the light. Hooray for everlasting architecture. So here was Bruno Taut, well, it's humorous now to call him the important German architect, but he was very important, writing at least half a century before Moon Hoon in a way which probably would have made Moon Hoon smile. That's it. So let's wish happy birthday to Bruno Taut, and the presentation ends now.